Hello and welcome to another Talking To episode. I'm your host Teddy, and today I'm being joined once again by
Hayden.
And today we're going to be talking about the TMNT 2003 Season 1 Episode 19, The Tales of Leo. So, what do you think about this episode briefly?
This episode is very short, but it's brief. Short and sweet. That's how I would describe this episode for today. Short, but sweet.
I'll just say that this episode is a really interesting one. Do you think that there's like all stories we should do tell in this one is really interesting for a variety of different reasons? But I wouldn't say it is like the typical type of episode that you normally watch because there's no action in it, and it just feels so off-brand for a Turtles episode. It just feels so weird, but at the same time, it is like really interestingly good. And also, do you think that another weird thing about this episode is the fact that like, so many people put this episode so high up on their list when they're talking about season 1 episodes that I wouldn't say it's like one of the best episodes from season 1, but I always feel weird like not putting it higher on the list because of stuff. But yeah, okay. So with the actual episode itself, we first start off with the Turtles and they escape from Maple's burning apartment by opening up a hole in the wall and escaping that way. And Casey decides to take all of them up to his grandparents' house. What do you think about that little scene there?
To be honest with you, Teddy, I didn't really have too much to say about that scene. Like, it was a good move that they managed to get out in time, but it wasn't. I didn't really have much to say. Like, it was there. Like, they managed to find the hole. They managed to get out in time before the big explosion. And after last week's episode, thinking that they were all dead because no one would survive that blast, but hey ho, they survived. But yeah, I didn't really have too much to say. The fact that April has a good thinking.
You have to say that for this little scene here, I think it's okay. I don't think there's anything really too much you can really say about it. It's just one of those scenes that happens. I mean, the only sort of criticism I can really give about this little scene here is the fact that it takes way longer than 30 seconds. And, that's a bit unrealistic. So, yeah. Okay, so
Yep.
Going into the next few parts, I feel like there's two ways we can go around this. We can either do all the stuff with the Turtles, talking about the stories, or we can do the Shredder stuff first. So yeah, which part would you like to do first?
I wanna look at the Shredder part first, because that was really interesting to me. Like, that's the one thing that stood out, like Shredder, and of course, the return of Baxter Stockman himself in the flesh, or what's left, really.
Okay, so with the Shredder scene, we're going to talk about the first part where Shredder is like overthinking things and thinking that basically the Turtles are still alive and they're doing the same trick which Shredder did a couple of episodes ago. And Baxter comes in saying that basically he can give all the evidence for basically proving that the Turtles are dead and all that. So what do you think about that scene?
It was a good scene, I'd say. The highlight of that scene was the return of Baxter Stockman. Like, we haven't seen Baxter in ages, and we have no idea what he's been up to, since he was recruited into the fold, of the Foot. But now that we get to see him with his hand cut off, his eyes scratched, and he has no leg, and of course, the punishments that we hear a lot more about now. Now, for me, it took me a couple of seconds to clock on what type of punishments it was. And then I realized, oh my gosh, he's being cut limb from limb for these punishments. And I'm like, this is like a kid's show. And they're actually like showing him like his arms have been chopped off. His legs have been sliced off. And it's very, very weird. And it took me a while to clock on. But now that I realize what type of punishments that Baxter's going through, it's pretty terrifying. It's like the Shredder will go to that sort of length to mutilate such a person like that. It's just insane, especially for a kid's show.
Yeah, I mean, I think that because I've seen this episode way too many times, the return of Baxter, I must admit I do enjoy it because we've seen him quite a while, but I do think that the initial shock of seeing what's happened to him, I don't think was really ever there because I remember watching this episode as a kid, but I don't remember the first time watching it. I don't think I even acknowledged the pain that Baxter was going through at the time. But I do think that with this scene, because I know that we've been talking about Baxter and how great that is, but I think that for me, the thing that really got me was the way that Shredder was thinking, and I do think that it was really really great, because we don't normally get to see villains think this or go this way, where they're thinking that basically the heroes will do the exact same thing which the Shredder did. And I do think that that was just really interesting to see. That Shredder was thinking, oh yeah, the Turtle's gonna hide out for a bit and come back and fight just like how Shredder did. I just found that really interesting, that was his mindset after doing all this, and even though basically after everything that's happened in the last episode, everything is going in his favour now, profits are going up and all that, but he's still thinking that way. I just found that really fascinating. But we do go into the next scene, and we do get to see Baxter is actually at April's apartment and trying to find different, or at least trying to find some DNA. What do you think about that scene there?
Just hold on a sec, Eddie. I just want to go back on what you said. Now that you said it out loud, that actually does make a good point. I don't know many villains or many villain characters in comics and TV series that actually think like that. This guy is probably the most smartest villain that I have ever come across in, well, basically ever. He's actually thinking that the Turtles actually survived after that huge explosion. And of course, like you said, his profits are up. He's having the time of his life, but he still thinks the enemy is still out there. And that's probably the most smartest way to think about it. And I've got to say, that's smart for a villain. Most villains are dumb and they say, oh, they never survived. They could never survive that. They can never survive the fall, the explosion, whatever. But yeah, it was really weird to see Shredder think that way, because I've never seen a villain do that before. It was just so surreal and weird, but it was actually kind of nice to see it, if you can understand. It was really cool to see, alongside with his thirst of power and his way of thinking. It was just super cool, and I really did enjoy it.
Yeah, I do think that his paranoia was a good thing for his character, and I think so. He's really fascinating that more characters aren't doing this kind of thing. But yeah, so what do you think about the Baxter trying to find DNA and evidence about the Turtles? What do you think about that scene?
Well, I wasn't expecting the Mousers to return. All the little Diddy Mousers, they're running around the place to figure out where they could have gone. But with Baxter, I can't believe that he has the technology to do that. Sure, we may have that in the real world, but for me, it was just interesting to find out, he's going through DNA, the debris, the explosions, even though it's a basic level of it that we, the audience, can understand. It was just interesting to see. But then, of course, what was even more interesting was that he made up false evidence. I don't know why he actually did that, because he should have gone back to Shredder to say, look, I've got some news, but don't rip my arm off for this, because I don't have many left. That's what should have gone on and said. And basically, I think what he should have done is to say, look, the Turtles are not here. They are still alive. Surely that would be better for the Shredder, instead of lying to him, because otherwise Shredder wouldn't be ripping off his arm if he did fail, if you get what I mean, right?
I can understand where you're coming from, but I think Baxter is more in it for himself than actually helping Shredder out, because oh god, because he comes in and says that he'll try and find evidence if he can have that armor, and I think that's his mindset. It's basically, it doesn't really matter even if the Turtles are alive or not, and the Turtles do come back to fight Shredder, he'll still have that armor. I think he's only in it for himself, and I do think that's made pretty clear by the end of the episode. And I do think that him doing the evidence bit was okay. I think the only weird bit about it was even when he got the Bill ribbon, I think I'm not too sure what it is, that he gets Bill cloth. I don't understand why he bites it. The same bit I don't understand, but then I know he pokes the 2 holes into it, but why does he bite it? That's the only thing which I never understood as a kid, and I still don't know as an adult. Does he? Yeah, do you understand why he bit it?
Yeah. To be honest, I have no idea. Maybe it was sort of gnaw marks, or to be honest, now that you say it out loud, I don't really know how to answer that, really.
So then in the next bit, or the final bit for the Shredder stuff, we do get to see Baxter comes back and gives him Shredder the evidence and says basically the Turtles are dead, and Shredder leaves and Baxter gets the armor. Do you have anything to say about that bit? Because I don't really have anything really to say about it. It's just one of those things that sort of happened, and there's some setup for future stuff which it could go down, but other than that, it's just one of those things that happened, really.
To be honest, I'm with the same with you. With Baxter Stockman saying, I finally got the armor, and I can finally... that's it. He said a really cool line, and I really liked it for some reason. He said, I can finally now dish out the punishments myself instead of receiving it. And that, I don't know, it wasn't exactly those words, but how he said it was pretty cool. And I really did like how he said it. It's like, finally, I get to dish out my own punishments accordingly. And it was just, I don't know whether it was super cool and weird at the same time. It's like, finally, I get to dish out my own punishments. And he did his evil laugh, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so then going into the tale side of things, basically the first thing, because there wasn't really too much to talk about in terms of in between the stories, so I thought we were just going to talk about the stories. Okay, so the first one we have is Donatello. Now, Donatello's story is basically, Donatello drives a remote control car, and then that goes into the water. Don tries to get it, and he gets stuck, and Leo saves him. So what do you think about that little story there?
To be honest, this was the first time that I got to see and experience what it was like for the turtles growing up in the sewers. Like, I've never seen this side of the turtles story, or the universe for that matter. So it was really interesting to see them as children, or young turtles. I really don't know. Would you call them children?
Turtle tots.
Still?
Everyone calls them turtle tots.
Turtle tots. Is that the term that is the term that you use in the turtle community right now? Turtle tots.
Yeah, it's been used in like toy packaging.
Okay.
Everyone just calls them turtle tots for some reason. No one knows why, but they're just for turtle tots.
Okay, turtle tots it is then. So we get to see them in their like turtle tot phase or whatever. But yeah, it was really cool and really interesting to see them growing up in the sewers. And for the story, it was really interesting. Like, it was the flashbacks, and I really do enjoy the flashbacks because they give more light and sense to the situation. Like, we never knew what it was like for them growing up in the sewers and how dangerous it was for them growing up as well until they learned on how to deal with the dangers. And but yeah, it was really interesting to find out what it was like for them. And of course, I at the end of that scene of that story, I mean, when Donnie wakes up from his unconscious state, he says, "Oh, you didn't get the toy car in the end." And I'm like, dude, Leo has just saved your life from drowning. You shouldn't be worrying about a car at this time.
Yeah. I mean, I think that for this story, I think it's okay, but it's not. I don't know. It's one of the stories that you can't really talk about too much because there's barely anything really in there. Yeah, I must admit, with the whole thing about you talking about the turtle tot stuff and how they're growing up, I must admit I've always loved like seeing turtles grow up. I want to see more stories on it. I just think that there's so much untapped potential there that you could really tell, and you know, there's so many stories you could really tell there about like it's been a training of turtles. This like fun like one like very episodic stories or like stories you could tell. I just would love to see a lot more of that kind of stuff. But with the actual Don story, it's okay. Again, don't have anything to really say. Must admit, the only good thing about it was Don's little joke at the end about asking Leo if he got the car. But again, I think with this story, there's not really too much I can really say about it. It's just one of the stories that happened. So then going into the next one, we do have Mikey's story. And I think this might, for me, I would say this is the weakest story they do tell throughout this episode. And in this story, we do get to see Mikey trying to distract Leonardo, and turns out that it's not working and stuff like that. And that's when Leonardo comes in and just more or less beats Mikey up. So what do you think about that little scene there?
To be honest, I didn't really have much to say. It was a short and brief story, and of course, Mikey didn't really have too much to say, which was a bit of a disappointment. and I think they could have used a different story for that one instead of using the fact to do, excuse me, to distract Leo from his training. I didn't really have too much to say. It was there, I guess, but I gotta say, I really didn't know Mikey had a Walkman. I don't know why. That just surprised me. Like Mikey's walking around with a Walkman. Do you know what a Walkman is?
Isn't that like something to do with music? I'm pretty sure. Or
it's an old yeah, it's a tape recorder.
Ah.
It's an old music player with a tape in it, and
okay.
they're quite an old thing. They've been discontinued because no one uses tapes anymore. But yeah, it used to be quite a big thing, Walkmans. I've seen them a couple of times, some around, but most of the times I see them in museums, and it's fascinating to see like the technology. Like it was set in that time zone, so they used the Walkmans to depict the time and era that this show was depicted in, which is really interesting to find out and see.
Yeah. I think that overall this story, I think it's an okay story, but I do think it's like the weakest one when you do compare it to other stories in this episode. But I do think that I do see the comedic value in this one, but again I don't think it's as strong as it could have been. I think there's potential there to tell an interesting story. I just don't think it was really there. So then we go into Raphael's one, and there's quite a bit, and we'll talk about the Raphael crime bit after the story, because I feel as though we've got quite a bit to talk about that. So with Raph's story, we do get to see that Raph wanted to be the leader, and they're playing for the leader, and that's when they encounter an alligator, and Leo beats up the alligator, and they go home. So what do you think about that story?
Well, it was certainly a change-up from the two previous stories from Donnie and Mikey. Let's just say that. I was not expecting a giant crocodile to appear out of New York sewers. Like, I was just not expecting it. Like, I thought it was going to be like a giant slug or like a rat, but a crocodile comes out of nowhere and starts attacking Raph. And I'm like, what? Hold on a minute. What? There's crocodiles in New York sewers? Like, sure, I've heard of the old fairy tale of crocodiles being in New York sewers, but this is like a different way. Like, there's a giant white crocodile in New York sewers, and it's just there, and it comes and attacks Raph. It was just, I wasn't expecting it. That's all I can say at this point.
Okay, so with the Raph story, I think it's an okay story overall, but I do think that when you do know what Raph's whole thing was that he wants to be a leader, when you know afterwards he cries, but and I do think that Raph and Leo's relationship throughout this whole episode is, I wouldn't say like this episode, like throughout the whole show is just amazing, fantastic, one of the best, and I do think that this is honestly one of the best scenes for their relationship. I mean, with the story, you can understand where we're coming from, and that's where everyone's going to the next bit, because this whole story is okay, but it makes it better because of the Raph's crime bit. So, in saying that, what did you think about Raph crying over Leo?
To be honest, I really wasn't expecting it. I was actually like, I felt sorry for Raph. Like, I looked at that scene and I'm like, oh my gosh, Raph is actually crying. I thought it was like a glitch on his character. Like I thought, oh, the animators, it's a little glitch under his eyes, but no, he was actually genuine crying, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's actually crying. Because I have never seen Raph cry, like especially Raph, because he's supposed to be the strong-headed, tough, determined, stubborn character that you cannot get a rise out of him. But surprisingly, he cried, and I didn't know what to say. I was like, oh my gosh, he actually does care about his brother, even though he acts like a total nutjob around it all. Like, he treats them like, well, you know, brothers, and of course it's brotherly love too, but I just wasn't expecting it. Literally, to see him sad and cry, it was a bit heartfelt, you know?
Yeah.
Like, just seeing him down like that about his brother, who really does care. And yeah, it was totally unexpected for me.
Yeah, I mean, this scene, I think that the image speaks louder than words. I don't know what to really say about the scene, because if this scene here, I would want, I really want to go into a lot more, but I know that like if I did, I would not have time to talk about anything else. But I just think that the relationship throughout Leo and Raph's throughout this whole show, like I previously mentioned, I think it's one of the best relationships, and I think this is one of the best scenes throughout the whole show to really represent it, and to show how much each other means and stuff like that. It just speaks so much louder than words, and I don't know how to I don't know how to really explain my point. It's too good to put into words. So yeah, going into Splinter's story. So we do have Splinter explaining that basically Leo had a height fear many years ago, and basically to get him out his fear, he would put him on different heights, and then Leo would fall down. So one day he's gonna decide to put himself in danger. Leo saves him, and yeah. So what do you think about Splinter's story?
I've got to say, I wasn't expecting Leo to be afraid of heights, especially because every time we see Leo, he's the leader. He's the strongest person that we know in this series, and he's just fearless of nothing. But then, of course, we then delve into his backstory, and to be honest, I really did enjoy it. It was a huge shock to me, though, that he was scared of heights, but as every great leader, they always go through their fears. Like, to become a good leader, to become a better person, is to confront your fears. And they explored this story and this arc of Leo's fear of heights really well, I think. And I really wasn't expecting it. Like, Leo, out of all the people that we know, that I've seen constantly, time and time again, the fearless warrior, afraid of heights, I just wasn't expecting it. But like I said before, it was really, really good how they played this out. Like, I really did enjoy watching the leaps and bounds that Leo came in to conquer his fear and to protect his master as well and his father. And it was just really, really good team. And most shows don't do that these days, and I feel like they should. But this was just really great steam, and I really did enjoy it.
Yeah, I have to say that with the trend bit, I think that we can all relate to that. I mean, especially if we was riding the bike, we all know that taking off the back wheels and going down like a road or something with parents holding on to us, and then we look back and turns out they're not there, then fall over. It was giving me like those kind of vibes with like Leo training. I don't know if you felt that way with like those bits there.
Yeah, I guess you're kind of right in that sense. Like, it does remind you of how, like, for instance, like when you ride a bike, for instance, like you remember your family trying to help and prepare you, and of course when they let go and you're riding by yourself, you're free from that fear of falling over and hurting yourself, because you've been shown how you can be doing it but independently, and it's a great feeling to feel. But yeah, that is actually a good way of thinking about it, riding a bike and realizing your parents are not there, and of course soon after you fall off, and
yeah,
it's a weird but great feeling to have.
Yeah, then when we do go into the next bit, we've been to like and more or less putting himself in danger to get Leo out of his comfort zone to help him. I think Splinter's intentions were there. I think the way they went around it was risky and then concerning, that he will put his children's safety or put them in danger. I just find that like very weird that he would go around. But I understand why he did it. I think his intentions were there, but it's maybe not the best way to do it. But again, I don't really know what to really say about this bit. It was okay. I just think that it was maybe the wrong way to go around it, but it helped Leo out, and yeah, that's all we really got to say about it. But afterwards, we do get to see Leo has waken up from all the stories, and that's more or less where the episode ends. This whole bit here, I want to say overall, this episode, it was really great, but I do think that the whole story thing, I do think that's really weird that they decided to use stories to try to wake up Leonardo. I just found that so weird throughout the whole episode. But yeah, I mean, like, what do you think about like the story thing for the episode?
It was an interesting concept to go down, and of course, I really enjoyed it. Looking about the past and the backstories of the turtles and how they were growing up. But yeah, I don't really have too much to say about it. Like, it was an interesting episode, and it wouldn't be in my top 10, but it was an interesting episode, and I really did enjoy it. That's all I can say.
Yeah, let's say, but this episode was like a really good one for being like very different and unique, and like standing out for I'll say for like all the good reasons for being unique and different, and not like having any fighting and just a storytelling one. I do think it was really interesting, but at the same time, I think that because it's so different compared to all the other ones, it just feels weird to. I don't know, because like so many people put this episode so high up on their list for quite a few different reasons, and I was either I don't know if this one is in my top 10 or not, but it's like definitely up there for being one of the better episodes for season 1. But at the same time, I also feel weird not putting it up in like the top 3 or top 5 or anything like that. So yeah. Okay, so you don't want to move on to the comments now?
Let's hear them, shall we?
Okay. Okay, so on YouTube we got Shay D'Angelo. They put one thing I feel is frequently overlooked in discussion about the series is the compassion these boys have. As exhibited in episodes like Lone Rough and Cub, Hey Touch and Go, Return to the Underground, Turtles in Space and stuff like that. Yes, this series dealt with darker themes, but these boys were so unbelievably compassionate and empathetic towards those around them. They never needed to get involved with this stuff, oh god. But it's in their nature to protect, to defend, and I've always appreciated that this episode was set with lighter tone. Makes that side of them a little more noticeable. Yeah, Leo's hurt bad, but it takes him a while to bounce back. But right from the start, he never had to deal with it alone. His brothers were always there for him. Such a beautiful storytelling. The 4 kids, they put this episode is one of the most heartwarming episodes, which really manages to get in tears. Yeah, it definitely got in a few tears from us and Raph. Magma Striker, they put sad yet touching. One of the best episodes that show the strong bond and brotherly connection of the turtles. Raph in particular was the best example of that in this regard. It shows that no matter how much they argue or disagree with each other, sometimes they stay stronger, support each other at any time and anywhere, regardless of what's happening around them. So good. It's been seen because it has to be seen because words alone do not do enough justice to this episode and how heartwarming it really is. Benoon Walker, they put when Raph gets emotional, then you know things are serious. And yeah, they definitely were. Haley Yeager, they put love how Raph was the only one that was there for Leo, both 2003 and the 1990 movie for when it happened in that movie. We got Austin McNeil. They put sounds like a rocking plan, buddy. That's actually that's talking about the podcast. So yeah. Gina Strange, they put I love it, and yeah. Okay, so do you want to hear some trivia now?
Let's hear it.
Okay, so this episode is ranked 10 on the top 10 Timothy episodes for this series, which again I don't think I personally I don't think it is one of the best episodes. No, I don't think it's a really good episode, but I don't think it's like top 10 worthy. So yeah. In Michelangelo's flashback, he asks Leo where his game guy is. It's obviously a spoof on Nintendo's Game Boy. Oh god, remember Game Boys? They were amazing.
Game Boys. Remember Walkmans as well? Well, actually, Walkmans were a bit before us, but the only reason why I bring up Walkmans is because my father had one, and he showed me at one time. Really old, but it still worked. But yeah, all these old technologies, we still remember them, which is crazy in my eyes. Like, we still remember all these old technologies. Gosh. Don't say that.
We really are old. Okay.
Oh.
Okay, so the next bit is most likely to keep the Turtles looking more human when a flashback of a young Turtle occurs. The eyes are given iris. Oh yeah. Well, that's interesting. This episode beginning is based on issue number 10 of the original comics called Silent Partner. Baxter Stockman identifies the TMNT as belonging to the group in Inhibida, whatever he said, which classifies them as terrapins. The red-eyed slider, which the TMNT mutated from in the original comics and the live-action movies, is a member of the terrapin family. And that was it for the trivia. There wasn't really too much there, really. Okay, so for the cast, and this week's one is also another week which I don't think we can actually talk about any of the cast members just because, again, we've done all of them already, so somewhat a bit of shame. Okay, so for this episode, we got Veronica Taylor doing April, Mark Thompson doing Casey Jones, Sam Riegel doing Donatello, Michael Sinterklaas doing Leonardo, Wayne Grayson doing Michelangelo, Frank Frankson / Gregory Abbey doing Raphael, Dan Donaldson doing Splinter, Scott Williams doing Baxter Stockman, Greg Carey doing Han, Scotty Ray doing Shredder, and yeah. Oh, that's one thing I would want to bring up. The Turtles, or the voice actors in this episode, I want to say this, I think this might be one of the best performances they do. Like, I mean, just because I would do the normal voices for the Turtles, then do Turtle voices, and then also you got Raph's emotional moments. I think the voice acting here was probably some of the best they did in the whole entire show. What do you think about their voice acting in this bit here?
To be honest, I didn't really pick up on the voice acting as such, because I know there was voices for the youngers or the Turtle Tots, as you would say, but I didn't really pick up on the voices that much. Like, I thought they just tweaked it, like the original voices, but they tweaked it using like some sort of audio software, perhaps, to make their voices sound more high pitched and younger. That's what I was thinking.
No, so so when I spoke to Mark Thompson about this, he said that basically he would have to basically they would like try to pitch their voice up, and try and do like a young voice, and then also the production team would try to like tweak it a bit to make it sound younger. So it's all like a bit of both, really.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah. Okay, so going into next week's episode, it is called Monster Hunter. What do you think is going to happen in that episode?
God, every time I do this, I always get it wrong. So, you know what? I'm just going to go all out this time. I think that they're going to return to the darkest, to the Stone City or Necropolis. They're going to return to Necropolis, alright? Okay. And they're going to go hunt the monsters down there, even though they've already turned. Maybe some other monsters that weren't turned, and they're still around down there, perhaps. That's what I'm thinking. They're going to go hunt the monsters to turn them back into humans. I know I've got it wrong, but that's just what I'm thinking.
You are so far off. You do realise the Turtles will still be in Northampton, right? They have like no connection to with Underground City whatsoever because they're in Northampton. So, yeah.
Northampton?
Yeah, God. You know the farm that, like Casey's farm is located in Northampton, so the Turtles are staying up there for the Turtles are staying up there for quite a while, just and get themselves back to normal before they return to the city. They're not going to return in the next episode whatsoever.
Oh, got ya.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
My bad. Sorry, when you said Monster Hunter, I was thinking more like, oh, they're going to return back, they're going to go hunt a monster. It's going to be one of those crazy episodes that has no relation to the story whatsoever. That's what I was thinking.
No, this series is very heavily story-driven and continuity-wise. Okay, so then for the final bit, which I know that you're gonna hate, but I sort of love it. Who do you think is gonna be starting the episode off?
Oh, it's that time again. Well, we had Shredder. We had Shredder today. We had the Turtles last time. I want to say it's gonna be. No, if they're gonna be at the farm, I think it's gonna be Casey, perhaps, because they're at Casey's farm. But I know it's not gonna be Casey, is it?
I'll give you another guess, and a clue. It's one of the turtles. Hopefully that helps.
Is it gonna be Raph?
No, it's Mikey.
I should have gone with the first choice.
Well, yeah, just keeping up consistency, I would say. So yeah, do you have anything else to say about this episode, or are you sort of done with this one?
To be honest, I really didn't have much to say about this. All I can say, it was short and sweet. That's all I can say. Like, it was short, it was sweet, it was brief, and it just showed you a lot about how the turtles were growing up in the sewers and how much danger there was and how they became the ninjas that they are today.
Yeah, I think that overall this episode was really great for like a variety of different reasons, and it was just one of those amazing episodes just to like wind down the viewer after watching the past few episodes, and it just did an amazing job of that. So yeah. Okay, so if you don't want to get onto the podcast, you can leave a comment on YouTube on YouTube post. You can leave it on Facebook post. You can leave it on Reddit page. You can also leave a text message or a voice message through Anchor. But yeah, I've been your host Teddy,
And I've been Hayden.
and we'll see you soon. Goodbye, yo, bye.
Bye.